There's a moment most men completely miss. A tiny window in a conversation where everything can shift, where attraction either quietly dies or suddenly intensifies. And the difference often comes down to just two simple words that trigger something deep in her psychology. Something emotional, something instinctive, something that makes her lean in, think about you later, and slowly begin to chase your presence without even realizing why. Most men believe attraction is built through long conversations, constant effort, and trying to impress. But the truth is far more subtle and far more powerful, because attraction is not about how much you say. It's about how you make her feel in the spaces between your words. And those two words act like a switch that turns curiosity into desire and attention into emotional investment. When you understand female psychology at a deeper level, you begin to see that attraction is rarely logical. It is emotional, reactive, and often unconscious. And what she responds to is not neediness or over-explanation, but a sense of calm certainty, mixed with just enough mystery to keep her mind engaged, even when you are not around. The mistake most men make is they try to fill every silence. They try to prove their worth. They try to secure attention by giving more. But in doing so, they remove the very tension that creates attraction. Because attraction thrives in uncertainty, in anticipation, in the feeling that there is more to discover. Those two words work because they introduce a pause, a space where her mind begins to wander, where she starts asking herself questions about you. And once she starts asking questions, she becomes emotionally involved. And once she is emotionally involved, she begins to invest. Think about the times when you found yourself thinking about someone unexpectedly. It wasn't because they told you everything. It was because they left something unsaid, something open, something that pulled your attention back to them again and again. And this is exactly how her mind works as well. The human brain is wired to seek closure, to complete patterns. And when you give her just enough, but not everything, you activate that natural tendency. You become a thought that lingers, a feeling that doesn't fully resolve, and that is where attraction quietly grows. Those two words are not magic in themselves. It's the energy behind them, the timing, the confidence, the emotional control, and the understanding that you are not trying to win her over, but allowing her to come toward you. When a man operates from need, he chases. He over-explains. He tries to secure validation. But when a man understands emotional dynamics, he allows space. He communicates with intention. And he knows when to step back. That stepping back is where the shift happens, because it signals something powerful without saying it directly. It tells her that you are not dependent on her response, that you are grounded in yourself, and that you are someone she has to move toward, rather than someone who is constantly moving toward her. And here is where it becomes even more interesting, because women are highly sensitive to emotional cues, not just what you say, but how you say it. Your tone, your pacing, your presence, all of it communicates something beneath the surface. And when your words align with a calm, confident energy, it creates a sense of safety mixed with intrigue. And that combination is incredibly attractive. Those two words, when used correctly, create a subtle push-pull dynamic, not in a manipulative way, but in a natural, emotionally intelligent way that mirrors how attraction actually develops in real life. You are not forcing anything. You are simply allowing the interaction to breathe, allowing her to feel something instead of overwhelming her with constant input. Many men underestimate how powerful restraint can be, how powerful it is to say less but mean more, how powerful it is to leave a conversation at its peak, instead of dragging it until it fades. Attraction is not built through exhaustion. It is built through moments that feel alive, moments that leave an impression, moments that create a desire for more. And when you consistently create those moments, she begins to associate you with that feeling, and that is when she starts to chase, not because you told her to, but because she wants to experience that feeling again. There is also an important emotional layer here that most people ignore, which is that attraction is deeply tied to how someone makes us feel about ourselves. And when you communicate in a way that allows her to feel seen but not fully figured out, appreciated but not taken for granted, interested but not pressured, you create a space where she feels both comfortable and curious, and that balance is incredibly rare. Those two words tap into that balance because they do not overwhelm her. They do not demand anything. They simply open a door and then step back. And when you step back, you give her the opportunity to step forward. This is where many men struggle, because stepping back feels like losing control. But in reality, it is the opposite. It is a demonstration of control, emotional control, which is one of the most attractive qualities a man can have. When you are not reacting impulsively, when you are not chasing every response, when you are not trying to fill every silence, you signal that you are comfortable with yourself, and that comfort becomes contagious. She begins to feel it, and she begins to mirror it, and slowly the dynamic shifts from you, trying to gain her attention to her naturally giving it. And once that shift happens, everything changes. Because now she is the one thinking about what to say next. She is the one wondering when you will message again. She is the one replaying moments in her mind, trying to understand you, trying to feel closer to you. This is not about manipulation. It is about understanding human nature. Understanding that attraction is not built through force, but through emotional experience. And those two words are simply a tool that helps create that experience when used with the right awareness. The deeper truth is that attraction is less about what you do and more about what you allow, what you create, what you hold back, and how you carry yourself in the moments that matter. When you start to see it this way, you realize that you don't need to say more, you need to say better. You need to feel more grounded, more intentional, more aware of the emotional rhythm of your interactions. And once you align with that rhythm, you stop chasing and start attracting. You stop trying to convince and start allowing. You stop overthinking every word and start trusting the energy you bring into the conversation. And that is where those two words become powerful, because they are not just words, they are a reflection of a mindset, a way of being that naturally draws people in without effort. Those two words are, this is not some complicated phrase or clever pickup line. They are simply, I see. And at first it might sound almost too simple, almost underwhelming. But the power behind these words is not in their complexity. It is in the emotional space they create, and the subtle signal they send when used with the right tone and timing. When you say, I see, instead of rushing to respond with advice, validation, or trying to impress her, you do something most men fail to do. You slow the interaction down, and you show that you are actually processing her rather than reacting to her. And that alone sets you apart, because most conversations today are fast, reactive, and surface level. When she shares something about her day, her feelings, or even something playful, and you respond with, "I see," followed by a calm pause as you create a moment where she feels observed, not judged, and not immediately figured out. And this triggers something deeper in her, because now she becomes slightly more aware of herself in your presence. Instead of you chasing the conversation forward, she begins to fill that space. She elaborates, she explains more, she invests more, and that is where the shift begins to happen naturally. It is important to understand that women are highly responsive to emotional depth, not just attention. And when you give attention without depth, it feels empty. But when you give presence without urgency, it feels meaningful. I see communicates presence without pressure. It tells her you are engaged but not needy, attentive but not trying too hard. And that balance creates a subtle tension that keeps her mind active. Think about it like this. When someone reacts too quickly or too predictably, your brain relaxes because there is nothing to figure out. But when someone responds in a way that is calm, slightly reserved, yet emotionally aware, your brain stays engaged because it senses there is more beneath the surface. That is exactly what happens when you use these words correctly. But the mistake many men will make is they will try to use the words without understanding the energy behind them, and that is where it can fall flat. If you say "I see" in a dull, uninterested tone, it feels dismissive, but when you say it with a calm, grounded presence, with a slight pause that shows you are genuinely taking her in, it feels different. It feels like you are actually paying attention in a deeper way. And that difference is everything, because attraction is built in these subtle emotional cues, not in the obvious things most people focus on. There's also a psychological layer here that makes this even more effective, which is that when someone feels partially understood, but not fully decoded, they naturally want to reveal more, they want to clarify, they want to connect deeper, and that desire to reveal is a form of emotional investment. The more she invests emotionally, the more connected she begins to feel, and the more connected she feels, the more likely she is to think about you, even when you are not there. This is how attraction quietly builds over time. Not through grand gestures or constant messaging, but through moments that create emotional impact and leave a lasting impression. Another key aspect of this is that "I see" helps you avoid one of the biggest mistakes men make, which is over-validation. When you constantly agree, compliment, or try to reassure her, it can feel nice at first, but eventually it becomes predictable and loses its impact. But when you respond with "I see," you are not immediately validating or invalidating. You are simply acknowledging, and that keeps the interaction balanced. It allows room for curiosity, for playfulness, for deeper conversation, and for emotional tension to exist without being resolved too quickly. And that tension, when it is healthy and natural, is what fuels attraction. There is also something else happening beneath the surface. When you use these words consistently, you are training yourself to be less reactive and more intentional, and that changes your entire presence. You stop feeling the need to prove yourself. You stop chasing approval. And you start observing more, listening more, and responding in a way that feels controlled and grounded. That internal shift is just as important as the external effect, because people can sense when someone is centered versus when someone is seeking validation. And when she senses that you are centered, it creates a different kind of respect, one that often turns into attraction because it feels stable, It feels masculine in a quiet, confident way that does not need to be loud or obvious. Now imagine a conversation where she shares something slightly personal, maybe about her past, her frustrations, or even something she is passionate about. And instead of jumping in with your own story or trying to fix it, you simply respond with "I see," followed by a thoughtful look or a slight nod, and then you let the moment breathe. That silence, that space, becomes powerful because it invites her to step deeper into the conversation. And when she does, she feels like she is choosing to open up rather than being pulled into it. That sense of choice is incredibly important because attraction grows when someone feels they are moving toward you on their own, not being pushed or persuaded. Over time, these small moments stack up, and she begins to associate you with a certain feeling, a feeling of being understood without being overwhelmed, a feeling of being engaged without pressure, a feeling that is both calming and intriguing at the same time. And once that association forms, she starts to seek it, she starts to crave those interactions. And that is when the dynamic shifts even further. She might start initiating conversations, asking you questions, trying to understand you the way you have been understanding her. And this is where many men get confused, because they think something suddenly changed, but in reality, it was building all along through these subtle emotional exchanges. The beauty of this approach is that it is not about tricks or manipulation. It is about aligning with how human emotions actually work, about respecting the natural flow of attraction instead of trying to control it. When you stop trying to force outcomes and start focusing on creating meaningful moments, everything becomes easier, more natural, and more effective. And I see becomes a simple yet powerful tool that helps you stay in that space, a reminder to slow down, to be present, and to allow the interaction to unfold rather than trying to dictate it. But there is still one more layer to this that most people never fully understand, and it is the difference between using these words as a technique and embodying the mindset behind them. Because without that mindset, the words alone will only take you so far. The final piece of this is where everything either comes together or falls apart. Because saying "I see" is not what makes her chase you. It is who you become while saying it that changes the entire dynamic. And if you miss this, you will keep looking for techniques instead of building the kind of presence that naturally draws her in without effort. What truly makes those two words powerful is that they come from a place of emotional self-control. And emotional self-control is deeply attractive because it signals stability, confidence, and a sense of inner direction that does not depend on her reactions. When you embody this mindset, you stop using words to get something and start using them to express something. And that shift is subtle but incredibly important because people can feel the difference immediately. If your words are driven by the need to impress, to gain approval, or to secure attention, they carry a certain tension that feels forced. But when your words come from a grounded place where you are already content within yourself, they carry a calm energy that feels natural and inviting. This is why two men can say the exact same words and get completely different reactions, because it is not the words themselves, it is the intention and emotional state behind them that shapes how they are received. To fully embody this, you have to start paying attention to your internal patterns, especially the urge to react quickly, to fill silence, to prove your value. because those urges are what break the very dynamic you are trying to create. When you notice that urge and choose to stay calm instead, when you allow a moment to pass without rushing to respond, when you choose presence over performance, you begin to build a different kind of confidence, one that is not dependent on outcomes, but rooted in self-awareness. And that confidence shows up in everything you do, in the way you speak, in the way you listen, in the way you hold eye contact, in the way you allow conversations to unfold without forcing them. Over time, this creates a consistent emotional experience for her, one where she feels both comfortable and slightly challenged, both understood and still curious. And that balance is what keeps traction alive. There is also an important truth here that many people avoid, which is that attraction cannot be controlled. It can only be influenced. And the more you try to control it, the more you push it away. But when you focus on your presence, your energy, your emotional control, you create the conditions where attraction can grow naturally, without pressure, without manipulation, without the need for constant effort. And in that space, something interesting happens. You stop worrying about whether she likes you, and you start observing whether you genuinely enjoy her presence as well. And that shift in perspective changes everything, because it puts you on equal ground, instead of a position of seeking validation. When you are no longer trying to win her over, you become more authentic, more relaxed, more yourself, and that authenticity is incredibly attractive because it feels real, it feels rare, and it allows her to relax into the interaction as well. The dynamic becomes less about chasing and more about connection, less about strategy and more about experience. And ironically, that is what often leads her to chase you, because she feels something different, something she cannot easily label, something that stands out from the usual patterns she is used to. At this point, I see is no longer just something you say. It becomes a reflection of how you engage with the world, how you listen, how you respond, how you allow people to reveal themselves without rushing to define them. It becomes part of your identity. And when something becomes part of your identity, it no longer feels like effort. It feels natural, effortless, and consistent. And consistency is key, because attraction is not built in a single moment. It is built over a series of interactions where the emotional tone remains aligned, where the experience you create remains stable and engaging over time. When she knows that interacting with you will always feel a certain way, calm, intriguing, grounded, she begins to trust that feeling, and once she trusts it, she leans into it more, she invests more, she opens up more. And that is when the connection deepens in a way that goes beyond surface-level attraction. This is also where intimacy begins to form, not just physical but emotional, because true intimacy is built on understanding, presence, and the ability to create a space where both people feel seen without feeling overwhelmed. And that is exactly what you are doing when you operate from this mindset. You are creating a space where connection can grow naturally, where attraction can evolve without pressure, where both people can move toward each other at their own pace. In the end, the idea that 2 words can make her chase you is not about the words themselves. It is about the deeper principle they represent, the principle of emotional awareness, restraint, and intentional presence. Those 2 words are simply a doorway into a different way of interacting, a way that prioritizes quality over quantity, depth over noise, and connection over control. When you truly understand this, You stop looking for shortcuts and start focusing on becoming someone who naturally creates the kind of experiences that people are drawn to. And when you become that person, you no longer need to chase, because the energy you carry, the presence you embody, and the way you make others feel will naturally draw them toward you. That is the real secret. Not a phrase, not a trick, but a shift in how you show up, how you connect, and how you allow attraction to unfold in its most natural and powerful form.